Hi everybody! Welcome to XSTEM All Access. I am Susie Martinez and I am so excited to be a part of this series showcasing the coolest minds in STEM. In this series, we'll deep dive into the diverse world of STEM careers and the individuals leading the way in science, technology, engineering, and math. As your guest host for this episode, I am so excited to chat with Captain Tasia Reed. She is an operations flight commander for the U.S. Space Force, and I'm going to ask her all the questions that you guys would like to know about her job, what inspires her, and what it's like to be a space operations officer with the most important job of protecting and securing space. And make sure you subscribe in the YouTube description below and follow us on all of our social media platforms to get updates on the new XSTEM episodes. Check out the full library of episodes at this QR code on demand right now. You're going to find topics from climate science to sharks to space engineering to robotics and absolutely everything in between. Plus, educators can now access NGSS and CASEL-aligned lesson plans to accompany every episode, including today's, and these lesson plans are written by educators for educators. Also, with your parents' permission, tell us how you were inspired today by tagging us at USA Science Fest, #XSTEM, and me at @AsterSue. And before we begin, please join me in thanking our partners, the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Space Force, for making this XSTEM series possible. Now, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm @AsterSue on Instagram, and I'm a payload engineer in the aerospace industry. I came from NASA, and I have a bachelor's of mechanical engineering, and I work in the aerospace industry. Now, I hope you are just as excited as I am to hear from today's speaker. Captain Tasia Reed is an operations flight commander assigned to the 10th Space Warning Squadron in Cavalier Space Force in North Dakota. In her role, Captain Reed leads a 16-member crew that executes the United States Space Force critical mission warning and space domain awareness missions. Captain Reed! Wow, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, hi, Susie. Thanks again for inviting me to speak with everybody today. I'm really happy and excited to be here and can't wait to answer some of your questions.
Well, I know the audience is just as excited to hear from you as I am, so let's jump right into the first question. Tell us about your job as an operations flight commander for the U.S. Space Force, and what is the mission of your role, and how does your work impact the general public?
Well, thanks, Susie, for that question. My day-to-day job as an operations flight commander here at the 10th Space Warning Squadron in Cavalier Space Force Station, North Dakota, really entails me managing the day-to-day processes for what we do for the Space Force. And so the mission of the 10th Space Warning Squadron is to provide missile warning and space domain awareness data for the broader U.S. Space Force and the federal government. We do things like monitor objects on orbit, give information about the characterization of certain objects. So, for instance, we monitor things like the International Space Station, and we provide the information that we are getting from our observations on the ISS to NASA so that they can update their information, their data, their records on what's going on in space and in orbit as it relates to the ISS. And so my day-to-day mission entails helping manage that particular operation. What we do here, broadly speaking, at Cavalier Space Force Station is to help with the missile warning and space domain awareness missions. And so I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more as we go on. But that's my day-to-day. I help maintain the operators and all their resources and assets.
Wow, Captain Reed, we already have something in common. Both of us have worked to facilitate the innovative research that's taking place on the International Space Station. In my previous role, I was a flight controller for the International Space Station, and it was an amazing job to protect the astronauts and their science on the ISS. Your work to monitor the International Space Station is such an important responsibility, and we thank you very much. I can't wait to dive deeper into your role in the mission of the Space Force. Speaking of the ISS, your work takes place in the domain of space, but you're doing your job from right here on planet Earth. What types of technologies do you and the other Space Force Guardians use to conduct missions from a far distance?
Well, that's another good question. So there are various different technologies that we use to be able to do our job here with the Space Force. And so the Space Force has a lot of different mission sets that we utilize to get the mission done. And so for what I do on a day-to-day basis, we use what is called a ground-based radar to do Earth sensing observation. So basically what we do is look at objects that are in orbit around the Earth and monitor their traffic. So you can think of us as kind of a glorified traffic cop, as it were, for objects that are currently on orbit in low Earth orbit. So that's about where the ISS currently sits in its orbital regime. And so that's just one of the technologies that we use. At a previous assignment, I worked with the space-based missile warning satellites that we use to detect missiles and rockets launching from any point in Earth. We also have other career fields within the Space Force. So you think about cyber and communications. We have a lot of cyber warriors out there who utilize their skill sets to defend our networks, as well as to help maintain those networks so that we can communicate with each other. And then finally, we also have another career field, the intelligence career field, that uses a lot of different data technologies to give us good analysis of our operating environment so that we understand what our adversaries are doing or what we as a force are doing, as well as giving us characterization on the status of our systems and things going on within the environment that may impact us. So there are a lot of different technologies that we use. If you guys have ever heard of the GPS constellation, that is the constellation of satellites that helps you with your position, navigation, and timing. So anytime you go to the bank, anytime you're sitting in traffic, anytime you're trying to get from point A to point B, that's GPS in action. And that's just one of the many technologies that we use within the Space Force to help us do our missions.
Oh my gosh, Traffic Cop for Space is officially the coolest title I have heard in a while. How amazing is it that you get to utilize GPS, a technology that all of us use every single day, I know I do, to help achieve your missions? As an engineer in the space industry myself, I can attest that you and we get to work with some of the coolest technologies that help us do our job in space and also on the Earth. Now, back to our questions. Since the U.S. Space Force is the newest branch of the U.S. military, tell us a little bit more about the agency's mission as a whole, and how does it feel to be a part of the team protecting and securing space?
That's another great question. All right, so I love talking about the Space Force because I think a lot of people get it mixed up. They don't quite understand what our mission is compared to, say, NASA or SpaceX. So I want to give you guys a little bit of background. So the Space Force has been around for 3 years now, and we have come a really long way in that short amount of time. There's a lot of things that go into developing a new branch of the military, and we have done so much in 3 years. It's unbelievable. That being said, we still have a long way to go. We are the smallest branch, and we are the newest branch of the military. And so what I do day to day and how that contributes to the Space Force's overall mission is critically important. And so what we do is enable what we call the joint force. So that is the Army, the Navy, the Marines, everybody, the Air Force. We put everybody together in a joint fight so that we can help protect and defend our nation and its interests. And so what we do on a day-to-day basis here at Cavalier Space Force Station is to provide those services for the missile warning and space domain awareness missions. So again, that's warning our national leadership of any incoming or imminent threats to the homeland, but also providing data, which is the preponderance of what we do every day, providing data on all those objects that are currently orbiting us in space. And there are a lot of objects up there. Again, we're like a glorified traffic cop. We're the ones telling everybody, hey, you guys got a satellite that's coming in and might hit this other satellite, so you may need to move. So again, That's just a small part of what we do in the Space Force, and this is just one little niche mission set. I mentioned earlier again, GPS, that's the position and navigation and timing service that we provide to the whole world free of charge. So many different things that the Space Force is doing, many different things that the Space Force is getting after. But again, the biggest thing, we help enable the Joint Force to do its job in protecting and defending our nation.
And most people probably don't even realize the work taking place within the Space Force has a huge impact on all of us, not just in the domain of space. And a very special thank you to the Space Force for making GPS available to all of us. I am not sure how I would get around without it. So, tracking objects in space sounds pretty complicated and also really cool for us science fiction fans out there. That's me. Can you share an example of the types of objects that you guys need to track in space and why it's important to do so?
So it is a difficult job, but we do have a lot of different complex processes and procedures that thankfully technology makes easier for us as humans to do. Some of the stuff that we track, I already mentioned before, but the International Space Station, that's really important because one, that's one of NASA's premier missions that they endeavor in every day. And why is it super important? Because we have humans on the ISS. And so trying to make sure that they're taken care of, that they are safe while in orbit, and making sure that the experiments that they're carrying out, all the exploration that they're doing in space when it comes to human spaceflight, that's really critically important. And so it's really important that we get our jobs right so that we can make sure that those guys are safe. Another example of things that are on orbit that we track, might have heard of Starlink. So SpaceX's Starlink constellation has currently, I believe we are up to about 12,000 different satellites. And we help track all the different satellite constellations that have gone up in the last couple of years or so. And so if it wasn't for the data that we provide, they wouldn't know where their satellites are or what's going on orbit to help keep them safe. So it's critically important that what I do, what other ground-based radars do, and there are about 4 or 5 other ones that the United States Space Force operates, it's really, really important that we do our job so that we can keep all of those assets safe and so you guys can get your services. Remember, without GPS, you don't have traffic lights, you don't have very good banking standards, and it will be a little bit harder for you to get where you're going if you didn't know how to get there to begin with. So those are some of the things that we as a Space Force contribute and what I do on a daily basis to help maintain those chains of custody and ultimately help protect our way of life and the way we do things.
Yeah, and the work you guys do is not only keeping people safe, but it's also helping NASA and the private industry push the boundaries of space exploration. That is so cool. Captain Reed, tell us more about your educational journey. You started with a bachelor's degree in philosophy, right? And you went on to earn 2 master's degrees, one in political science and one in space studies. What inspired you to ultimately follow the path of a STEM degree, and how has it shaped your career?
Okay, so my educational journey. So I started out going to college in 2004 when I graduated from high school. And for me, I was really interested in a lot of different things, a lot of different STEM career fields, but I really, really zoomed in on computer science. So when I first started out in school, I was going to school as a double major. I was doing computer science and computer engineering or electrical engineering. Uh, the major that I was doing at the time, it's changed names a couple of times now. So it might be something different. However, yeah, I started out as a complete computer science nerd. And I thought because I had an interest in it and because I had pretty good grades in high school, that that was the direction I was going to go and it was going to be pretty simple. But it wasn't. It wasn't that simple for me. And I found out very quickly I don't really care to code. I don't really like sitting at a computer all day, hacking away at code. And so I decided to change my major. And so, as you noted, I have a bachelor's degree in philosophy and two master's degrees, one in political science and one in space studies. And, honestly, I never gave up my passion for STEM. I just went in a different direction because I needed to take a step back. And so, even though I have a passion for philosophy, I have a passion for the arts and the humanities, I still maintained that passion for STEM. And so that's why I have a space studies degree, which is interdisciplinary in nature, but still vitally important. And it's still really, really important that I have a good understanding, a good grasp of scientific principles, because otherwise I wouldn't even be able to understand the interdisciplinary nature of a space studies degree. I wouldn't understand the STEM side of it as well as I did. And so, yeah, I graduated in 2004 from high school, graduated in 2009 with a Bachelor's of Arts degree in philosophy. And then 2 years later, I came into the military because I wanted to do something that was a little bit greater than myself. And I wanted the opportunity to further my education, maybe to go into another STEM career field. And so when I came into the military, I had the opportunity to do what was basically my number one job pick coming into the military. And I enlisted in 2011 as a cyber systems operation journeyman, is what I ended up as. And I loved it. It's still computers, but it wasn't me sitting and hacking away at code. But it still helped keep those creative juices, those thoughts and aspirations about STEM alive enough for me to continue on, where I ended up getting picked up as a space operations officer in 2016. And so I've been doing space now since 2016. So going on about 7 years now. And I love it. I think it's great. And yeah, just because of those experiences and my passion for space and my passion for STEM in general, I've been able to use both my master's degrees to the effect that it has helped me better understand my job as a space operator. And so, yeah, I had a very weird academic journey, as it were. And not everybody does what I did to get where I am now, but that's okay. That's totally fine. Everybody has to go their own way, has to figure things out for themselves, and as long as you get where you're going, that's all that really matters.
Wow, what a great message about taking a step back and going in a different direction. I also love what you said about striving to do something greater than yourself. I really feel that, especially considering I worked at NASA as well. There is absolutely nothing wrong with changing course, no matter how far down a path you've gone. I agree that getting where you're going is the most important part. It's really helped me in my career to view it that way. If you've experienced this, I've experienced this, then everybody's experienced this, so it's amazing that you're talking about it. You have accomplished so much in your career so far, but I imagine you have more exciting things coming down the line and in your future, even more meaningful work. Where do you see your STEM journey taking you in the future?
Oh, good question. Where do I see my STEM journey taking me? Well, I'll be honest. I really, really like being in space, space operations, as it were. And I've loved the journey so far. So honestly, I don't know where it's going to take me, but I know if I keep going and I stick with it, I stay with the Space Force and all the things that I'm doing now. I know I'm going to have some really, really cool things ahead of me. I'm going to have a really, really neat, interesting, wild, and wacky journey and story to tell my kids and my grandchildren when they're born. And yeah, I just don't know. I don't really have any specific things in mind about what I want to accomplish, but if I can just keep doing what I'm doing now, doing space operations, doing the actual operation side of things, oh man, I'd be so happy. Um, yeah, this is a job I didn't ever think I was ever going to be able to do, and to be doing it is really a dream come true for me.
Wow, your passion for your work is truly inspiring. Diving a little deeper into your career journey, Have you faced any obstacles? And if so, how did you overcome these obstacles and what influence did they have on you?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Obstacles. So I think it's really important for you guys all to understand that as you grow up and you get older, as you go through your academic journey and you go through your careers, you're going to encounter some obstacles. Some of those obstacles are going to be you don't have enough resources, you have to do more with less kind of deal. And then some of those are just obstacles that are personal to you. So for me, the obstacles that I encountered while I was going to school were, when I was in high school, I was a really smart student. I got A's and B's. Everything pretty much came really naturally to me. And then I got to college, and I thought, okay, well, I can just keep doing the same things I did when I was in high school. And as it turns out, that's not really the case. It's not really true. Um, Part of the issue for me was I didn't develop very good study habits when I was in high school. Again, everything came to me super quick, super easy. Same thing when I was in middle school. I just loved being in school. So because I had an interest, things came really easy for me. But when I got to college, college, you got to dig in deep. You got to really understand the subject matter. And there's a little bit more higher expectation on you uh, with the kinds of homework and the kind of work that you're producing. So it took me a couple of years really to one, figure out what I wanted to do, whether I was going to do computer science or if I was going to do physics or if I was going to do philosophy. And when I finally figured it out, when I finally figured out what my passion was and to put all of my effort into that, things really took off for me. But again, it was developing that discipline and understanding the hard work that goes into it. You know, you can be really, really smart, but if you don't have the discipline and if you don't put in the time and the effort and the work to really understand the concepts, because, not everything comes to you really, really quickly. Math is that way for me. I think math is a wonderful subject, but it's hard. It is difficult. And so, if I had taken more of the time earlier on in my academic career to sit down with my teachers, with my professors, to really understand the subject matter, I think I would have been really well off and better off then. Luckily for me, when I pursued my graduate degrees, I really sat down with myself and said, Self, you got to be more self disciplined. You got to put in the hard work and you got to be humble. You got to understand not everything is going to come to you really simply. So you really have to make a concerted effort to go and talk to your professors. You got to make a concerted effort to get up and go to class and be in class on time and not just skip out and stay up late and play video games or go out with your friends. You got to eat healthy. You've got to exercise. You got to take care of yourself because as you go along, all of those things are going to be really important. And so now I really understand the value of the hard work and discipline. And so that's what I'll tell any of you guys. If you're going through something right now, you're having a really hard time with math, with any of your science courses, don't give up, but just think about it. Take a little bit more disciplined stance and really dig deep. Talk to your professors, talk to your parents, talk to your friends, develop maybe a study group or something like that. And hopefully that helps hold you accountable for your work and what you're going to be able to accomplish in your career. So don't be afraid, but ask for help and ask for help early on and do the things you're supposed to do, like doing your homework on time, like asking the questions.
Yeah, asking for help early on, that is great advice. I wish I had asked for help earlier than I did. And having pep talks with yourself certainly doesn't hurt either. I also give myself daily affirmations. I have another question for you, but it's about the Space Force this time. The agency's motto is Semper Supra. So, can you share what the literal meaning of that is and what it actually means to you personally as a member of the U.S. Space Force?
Okay, yeah, the Space Force motto. I think it's awesome. I think it's a great, great motto. So what does it mean? So semper supra. Uh, that stands for always above. That is the literal definition, the literal meaning of the Latin. And I think that it's an apt motto. I think it very much describes what the Space Force does and what we contribute to the joint fight, right? So if you guys have ever learned, studied a little bit, maybe even heard about this, sometimes we talk about it in military warfare, getting the ultimate high ground. That helps give you a vantage point that puts you at an advantage against your opponent, against your adversary. And so that's what we do in the Space Force. We provide that ultimate advantage over our adversaries, as well as an advantage to our peers and our allies. Having that high ground is critical. You know, we can see everything, and when you can see everything, you can better plan. You can then anticipate what may happen. So I think it's a great motto. I think personally, we couldn't have come up with a better motto to really um, describe what it is the Space Force provides to the Joint Force and to our nation.
Always above. I can't think of a more appropriate motto for our nation's military space agency. And it is time for our final question for today. Most of us are fascinated by space, and many of us may be intimidated to follow a career to work in space. What advice would you give kids who are curious about pursuing a career in the Space Force or in space in general?
Great question. So, for any of you guys out there who are interested in pursuing a career in space, I say go for it. Space is hard, but it's not impossible. You guys can do anything you put your mind to. Uh, we have lots of people who maybe they thought that they would never end up in this position, and now they're serving in the United States Space Force. That's awesome. That's where I was. I have always wanted to do something in space, but I didn't always think that I would be in a position to actually influence or do something with space. And I'm just lucky and blessed to be in the position that I'm in. And I treasure that every single day. And so my advice to you guys is if this is something you want to do, you got to put in the hard work, you got to put in the dedication, you got to be disciplined, but take a leap. Do the hard things. We need people who are going to be awesome at science and in technology, the engineering and mathematics. We need you guys to forge a new path. And so I would just say if this is what you want to do, don't be afraid. Reach out, ask for the help, and again, build up that grit, build up that perseverance. Don't let anything get in your way. Don't let anything stop you. Because if that was the case, I probably wouldn't be here either. If I can do this, I know you can. So keep up the good work, put in the work, and don't worry about it. Plow through and you'll make it. I promise you.
Yeah, don't let anything get in your way or stop you. What an amazing message to leave our conversation on. Captain Reed, thank you for joining us today. I really enjoyed chatting with you and hearing about your work about protecting and securing space.
Thanks again, Susie. I really do appreciate having the opportunity to talk with you and everybody today. And again, I hope that this talk was as aspirational and inspirational as it was for me to give to you all. I hope you all have a good rest of your day, and I hope to see you sometime soon. Thanks.
We hope to see you soon as well. And speaking of cool jobs for the Space Force, let's watch this brief video to see some more. And make sure you check out the Air Force and the Space Force online and follow them on their social media to keep up with the amazing things that they are doing. And thank you for tuning in today. Make sure you subscribe in the YouTube description below and follow us on our social media platforms to get updates about new episodes. You are not going to want to miss any of these. Plus, you get free access to fun weekly content for students and teachers, such as STEM facts for students and classroom tips for teachers, and so much more. Don't forget about our on-demand full library of episodes right here at this QR code. Each of these episodes has an NGSS and CASEL-aligned lesson plan for teachers to use in their classrooms. With your parents' permission, tell us how you were inspired today by tagging us at USA Science Fest, #XSTEM, and me at @AstraSue. And keep up with me on my social media platforms right here. And I had a blast being your host today, but don't sign off just yet. You're going to want to stick around to the end of the video for a fun trivia game that you can do at home or in your classroom. Have fun and good luck!